Gamers, let's not pretend PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass multiplayer subscriptions are okay. They're exactly why PC gaming is arguably cheaper in the long term. Unfortunately, that's not the case with consoles. Both Microsoft and Sony have long introduced multiplayer subscription plans through Xbox Game Pass and PS Plus, respectively, which means console gamers must subscribe to either, in most cases, to play games online, excluding free-to-play titles like Fortnite. I think a bigger selling point for PC is its versatility over the consoles themselves. Hello fellow travelers and welcome to the Hardlight Network. I have been a PC gamer for the last 6 years, and over that time I've come to believe that PC gaming is the definitive way to game. Growing up, consoles were the better option. They were cheaper, more accessible, all my friends had them, and the only PC we had in the house was used by my parents for sending emails and saving family photos. However, as time went on and consoles shifted towards a subscription-based model to access their online multiplayer services, it became more difficult to justify playing on them. Now, with the exponentially increasing costs of console hardware as well as the DRM-riddled multiplayer experience, it's even less justifiable today. In today's article, we're going to be discussing the differences between multiplayer gaming on consoles and PC and see if we can finally settle this argument once and for all. But before we get into it, guys, do me a solid and hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming out for you guys in the future, and also take to the comment section down below with your thoughts on the console versus PC issue. Also, if you did want to support this channel further, there are super thanks and memberships options down below. Feel free to join the channel today for access to exclusive content and perks that you can't get anywhere else. But without any further ado, let's get into today's article. Today's reading comes to us from TechRadar.com and is entitled, Gamers, let's not pretend PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass multiplayer subscriptions are okay. They're exactly why PC gaming is arguably cheaper in the long term. It's been a long while since I took a huge and ambitious leap into the gaming PC ecosystem, and with it have come plenty of highs and lows. As one who also plays games on console, specifically Sony's PS5, it was incredibly frustrating to go from a simple startup and play design to then deal with file tinkering and adjusting other PC settings. However, once I became accustomed to this and also learned about the benefits of the platform, notably that PC multiplayer was free, as it should be, it became my primary gaming station. Unfortunately, that's not the case with consoles. Both Microsoft and Sony have long introduced multiplayer subscription plans through Xbox Game Pass and PS Plus, respectively, which means console gamers must subscribe to either, in most cases, to play games online, excluding free-to-play titles like Fortnite. Now, you may read that and say, quote, well, it's been like this for years, and it's normal, right? The former is right, yes, but the latter statement explains the issue in a nutshell. Ever since this online paid subscription model was introduced to console gaming, it's sadly become normalized by gamers and just brushed aside as something that just has to be done. So much so that now it's at the point of no return, as it's become a standard for years. Simply put, we all already pay for an internet service to use across multiple devices, especially access to the internet on PCs. If there's a new online game I'm looking forward to, I can easily purchase it and dive right in with no extra required charges on platforms like Steam, Battle.net, or Epic Games Store. So if that's the case, why the exception with consoles? It ultimately brings me to the understanding that PC gaming is a cheaper expense in the long term versus consoles. Still with me? Good. I'll explain why. While I've recently encouraged console gamers to stay away from PC due to the ridiculous price inflation of GPUs, it still doesn't change this point. Gaming PC hardware is more expensive than consoles, yes, but actually being able to play games is cheaper. On PC, gamers have access to a variety of inexpensive games either through Epic Games Store's free releases, also Prime Gaming, or online key marketplaces like CD Keys, offering new games at significantly lower prices. I can't remember the last time I've had to pay full price for a single game, and part of that includes some of Steam's generous sales. Now, there are console games available on key sites, and dare I say, plenty for Xbox consoles. But that's far from the same story for PlayStation games. There are a few games at key retailers, and if there are, they are often old titles that appear months after launch. What's worse is that Sony's PlayStation Store hardly has any steep sales, and old games tend to stay at their original retail price, even years after launch. If you don't believe me, take a good look at God of War Ragnarok, a 2022 game that's still $69.99. Essentially, it's either you pay up, which could potentially be $80 soon, or be forced to await a rare and enticing discount for a game, since the industry is infamously moving away from physical copies. At least with physical copies, this wouldn't be as big of an issue, as prices would vary, and you can't have the game taken away from you at any moment. But that privilege is slowly fading away. I held on to my RTX 3080 Ti for 4 years, after initially buying it at €1,099. Equivalent was $1,199. Its original retail price, closer to the end of its life cycle in 2021. Despite the terrible PC ports of recent years, I could have easily continued with NVIDIA's RTX 3000 series GPU, especially now with DLSS 4. If I hadn't had the privilege of being offered an upgrade. My point is, while buying high-end hardware is expensive as a bundle, it can last you longer than console generations without needing an upgrade. While games aren't nearly as expensive as those on consoles, specifically Sony's PlayStation systems, the thing is, consoles are creeping up on PC pricing, with the PS5 Pro at $699. And of course, there's the elephant in the room, which is the PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass. The former's base subscription plan, which is known as Essential, costs $60 a year, just a few dollars short of what you would pay for the standard edition of a new Call of Duty game at $70. You throw in the cost of service and the game, and you're paying $130. It gets worse with the premium plan that essentially replicates Xbox Game Pass, but without day one titles, and it costs $120. Do you see where I'm going with this? I can vouch for Microsoft's Game Pass service, which provides plenty of new games day one for both console and PC players. And that doesn't happen with PS Plus, and in all honesty, its monthly games are lackluster. That doesn't make it any better though, as you still need to pay for Game Pass Core to play online on console. However, PC players also don't have to rely on Games Pass for new games and can find inexpensive alternatives. There's little reluctance when purchasing cheaper games on PC, and I don't get the same feeling with my PS5. It's got nothing to do with being broke, but instead knowing what's worth purchasing and what isn't. If pricing is what has deterred you from building a gaming PC, then just know that the first and biggest hurdle will be pricing of hardware. After that, you're on your way to cheaper gaming without any paywalls for things that should be prerequisites. So that's going to do it for the written article, and there are several points I wanted to touch on, because while I agree with the general direction of the article, I think some of the specific information is either wrong or a little misleading. For one, I've got to point out that the pricing for hardware is getting less expensive for PC builds, whereas it's getting more expensive for consoles. There's pretty much been an exact opposite trend in pricing when it comes to PC and console over the last couple of years. The most expensive part of your PC build is going to be your graphics card. That's true. And while pricing can get pretty wild at times, the market fluctuates much more frequently than it does for consoles. If you're building your own PC and you're not going through one of these pre-build sites which upcharges for labor and LED lights, then chances are you'll absolutely be able to find a gaming PC at a competitive price. I understand that some people, maybe even most people, see the convenience of being able to play right out of the box as an acceptable trade-off for pricing, but honestly, if you build your own PC, you learn more about your machine, you learn about how to repair it if anything goes wrong, and it also saves you a lot of money in the long run. For my next point, when the article lists tinkering with files, I would argue that this is actually a positive selling point for PC, whereas it's a drawback for console. Having access to your game's INI and configuration files is an absolute game changer. Not only do you have more freedom when it comes to tailoring the gaming experience to your preferences, if you ever run across any issues like lag or freezes, you can definitely fix that 9 times out of 10 by, quote, tinkering with the files. We've seen the direction that companies like Nintendo are going in, and, quote, tinkering with the files gets you in big trouble with them. to the point where they're threatening to brick your console if they find out you're doing it. This can include actions like modding the hardware or software of your console, but it can also include the use of emulators, both of which are freely available on PC without any threat of shutting down your system. When you build or buy your own PC, you actually own your own PC. While I agree that if you build your PC to the appropriate specs and if you buy from the appropriate marketplaces, you can absolutely build a much more cost-effective machine than consoles, I think a bigger selling point for PC is its versatility over the consoles themselves. Your basic gaming PC has enough RAM and computing capacity to run multiple programs at a single time, which is not something you can do with consoles. Say you're playing a new game that you're struggling with and you need to pull up a tutorial or a walkthrough to help you get through it. You can easily pull up a second window with YouTube and watch it right there on your PC while gaming, instead of having to pull out your phone and stop and look at the phone. Not only that, but platforms like Steam have a built-in community tab that not only helps you address technical but gameplay issues. All in all, I believe that the PC gaming experience is much more versatile in its ability to be custom tailored to its player. And when it comes to pricing, the gap between console and PC prices is shrinking every year. And honestly, if we give it just a couple of more generations, your average gaming PC is going to be just as powerful as contemporary Xbox or PlayStation consoles for a fraction of the price. And on the other end of the PC spectrum, the most powerful and expensive PCs will be leagues above anything that either PlayStation or Xbox can offer. But that's going to do it for this video today, guys. Thank you so much to anybody who has watched up to this point. If you can, do me a solid and hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future, and also don't forget to take to the comment section down below with your thoughts. Don't get me wrong, guys, I love my consoles, and I still have all of my consoles from the Nintendo 64 to the Xbox One. I just think that when it comes to modern gaming, the PC is definitely taking the lead when it comes to giving gamers what they actually want from the experience. But of course, there's still tons of work to do, so as always, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.